Lickable wallpaper for nursery walls. Lick an orange, it tastes like an orange. Lick a pineapple, it tastes like a pineapple. Go ahead, try it.
I got a plum.
Grandpa, this banana's fantastic. It tastes so real.
Try some more. The strawberries taste like strawberries. The snozberries taste like snozberries.
Snozberries? Who ever heard of a snozberry?
We are the music makers, and we are the dreamers of dreams.
Hello, listening people.
Hello.
Hello, Bartek. How are you doing?
I'm doing. How are you, Ryan?
I am also doing. That's it. That's the podcast. We are doing, and that is the name of the podcast. The Doing Podcast.
Yeah, just a generic present tense verb. No specifics.
That's it. Do you think there is a podcast called The Doing Podcast? Do you believe there has to be? If there isn't, do we own it now?
Do we it? Huh?
Do we it? But
does it remind me of an Ali G bit?
What bit?
When he's in Wales and he's learning how to say I like, it's like Dewey Hoffy.
I'm not finding the Doing It podcast. I'm finding the Doing It podcast, Doing It Online podcast,
like sex.
Doing It Right podcast, the Imperfects podcast. So no, Doing Good podcast.
The Doing.
We're the Doing podcast here, and we're doing a podcast, a film one this time round, in which we talk about a movie that has come recommended, and we are the Doing podcast because we are both doing young gentlemen who both happen to be doing. And this is such a weird...
Dewey Hoffy, this joke.
This is the whole episode, by the way. But let's get real, as David Lynch would say.
Get real.
We are spit and polish. We're both spitting. We're both Polish. And today we're talking about a German movie, technically, I guess. It's this film that I recommended for us is a real global affair. It's got a bit of everything for a bit of everyone, and it's
a worldly film.
And yet, because we're talking about Willy Wonka and the Chocolate Factory, the 1971 film that is filmed in Germany for the most part.
Yeah, I think it was Munich.
In Munich, but there's actors from the US, there's actors from the UK, there's actors from Germany, there's actors from Turkey.
We were denied a South American actor.
Oh my God, we were denied an Aussie actor. Where were we in this film? What was one of us an Oompa Loompa, mate? Oh, crikey.
We didn't get a single Wonka bar because they were so far away from everywhere. By the time their shipment arrived, the 5 tickets were found.
By the time it arrived, the chocolate would have melted. So that's where things would have been for Australia. It's so hot down here. The chocolate would melt. We don't eat chocolate in Australia. We only eat Anzac biscuits. We only eat that because they're tough. They survived the war, those biscuits. They were veterans too.
I'd like to see Willy Wonka's take on the Anzac biscuit.
This is a detour, but I watched a really interesting video from a cooking channel that is all about recreating historically accurate food. And they recreated the type of Anzac biscuits that were in the trenches of World War I. Not the ones that came later. There's a whole different recipe style that goes on, but it's interesting stuff nonetheless. But no, we're here to talk about Willy Wonka and the Chocolate Factory, a film that is iconic, is classic. I am shocked if people have not seen it before, but if you have not seen it before, it's quite a tale. Bartek, how would you describe Willy Wonka and the Chocolate Factory to someone who hasn't experienced it before?
That's a good question. So the part that everyone remembers is mostly the second half of the film where, 5 winners of a, chocolate company's contest to find the 5 tickets that have been sold in 5 of the millions of chocolate bars that have been distributed, get to have a tour of this magical factory that, according to a random tinker, no one goes in, no one goes out. And, the mysterious owner of the factory, Willy Wonka, no one's seen him in ages. And now he's, for some reason, allowing 5 lucky pairs to come into his factory and have a tour.
And get a lifetime supply of chocolate.
One
of them will.
And, the thing keeping the movie going is what room are we going to see next? What weird, interesting things going to happen next?
And what will be the fate of the people in the factory as we get deeper and deeper into the insanity that lies in. But also, this is a family film.
Mm-hmm.
This isn't a horror film.
musical.
This is a musical. It's a comedy. It's a feel-good story. It's a story of the impoverished. It's a Roald Dahl story adaptation. Roald Dahl had a very particular style. He had a very particular way of getting to themes and messaging. Stories of his being, of course, the witches,
BFG,
the
this
Twits,
and the sequel.
Yes, this and the sequel, the Twits. He did so much, but the adaptations of his work is always very interesting or often different to the actual source material, which upset him greatly.
Yeah, there's a lot of trivia about that.
Most trivia about Roald Dahl isn't very positive in general in his life. He doesn't seem like the nicest guy in the world. He did not seem, but I recommended Willy Wonka and the Chocolate Factory because it's a film that's near and dear to my heart. It's something that I grew up with. It was on television all of the time. We never owned this movie on physical media. It was never needed to be owned because you would reliably see this at some point within the year. That's how much of a staple it was for television to play this. And there's just something special about those movies. We've covered so many of them on the podcast over the years, whether they be for children or adults. Those films that were always on the rotation on just broadcast television, such as Big Fat Liar, the film that kicked off this entire podcast, that was always on TV. Ones that we haven't covered, like Jumanji, was always on TV. It doesn't matter what decade it was from. And I think that's something that I love about Willy Wonka and the Chocolate Factory, is this is well before our time.
Yeah, like 22 years, I think.
And within our childhood, a remake was made by Tim Burton with Johnny Depp, and yet still, for young and old, for children today and for children like us that grew up with it and children who saw it when it came out, this is the film that remains. This is the one. It just has a certain lightning in a bottle, mysterious, hard to replicate charm that is so of the 70s, but yet the film remains timeless. It's something that can be appreciated from different ages, from different generations, and I wanted to talk about it. And yes, this is the year of musicals, as I declared at the end of our podcasting last year, and this was one of the first ones I wrote down of like, what's a musical we should cover on the podcast? This was one of the first ones I thought of. And although it's a musical, the musical numbers aren't that elaborate. They aren't that they aren't that over the top. They're far and few between as well, but yet there's something beautiful. And the music itself, the numbers and just the score is one of the most important features and characters of the film itself. It's what I think of.
Yeah, it's got that very classical thing where a classical, movie musical where, the tunes of the musical numbers appear in the score like very frequently. Like you hear the tune of I've Got a Golden Ticket like half a dozen times before you actually get up to the song.
And the lyrics for some of the songs, yes, pop on the screen so you can sing along or you can get the message of what the song is, and yet...
Oh, yeah, the Oompa Loompa ones.
The Oompa Loompa ones, yet it does not feel like childish. It just feels, or off the beaten path of what the movie's doing. It feels in line. You're like, yeah, this feels like what the movie would do stylistically. Willy Wonka and the Chocolate Factory, what is your history and relationship with this film?
The first time I saw this film, I was 10 years old. I hadn't heard of this film specifically, and I hadn't heard of the book, but the Wonka branded lollies were a big thing growing up. And there was a Wonka website that had a lot of, like fun games and things like that was really popular at my primary school. So the idea of this Wonka brand was a fun thing in my childhood. So, and I remember one day I was at my dad's house watching just some random TV channel, and there was an ad like, oh, on this day, we're going to show Willy Wonka and the Chocolate Factory movie. And I was like, what? They made a movie out of the lollies and website, it didn't click to me that like, oh, this might have been more of an origin of all this stuff, let alone the book. So I was like, I want to see that. That should be really fun. And I told my dad, like, Dad, can we please, when this is showing, like, watch it? And he's like, yeah, sure. And we did, and I really, really enjoyed it. And I think it's been a very long time before last night since I'd last seen it, but I remember growing up, I watched it a bunch, to the point that I told you, even at the end of the last episode, that, we did have a DVD of it. And I remember the last time I tried using it for something, the disc was, quite messed up. There was like all these little marks on it. So that tells you that, yeah, that disc was put through a lot of work.
Do you recall what it was like that first time seeing it? Because for me, it's difficult because I saw it from a very young age. So it's one of those cases of how can you recall the first time seeing a movie when it's been in your whole life?
It's hard to say. The thing that I always remember, which ironically I think isn't really a popular part of the film, is one of the shots from the Cheer Up Charlie song where he's like walking down the street and it's like a, long shot and he's walking the distance. So it was like this is a bit different from, what I was expecting. But yeah, the whole factory sequence, I just generally remember finding it quite a lot of fun. The songs are catchy. Like, again, however long it's been, I think, I wasn't even an adult last time I watched it. Like, I still have the songs stuck in my head every now and then.
It's also one in which the songs are earworms. Some of them are just memorable. There is also the pop culture aspect. Some of them have been parodied or riffed on or used in pop culture. I mean, The Simpsons is something that would use these things a bunch, like the Candyman song was used for the Garbage Man and all of that. And I think about that too, and just Willy Wonka, the character, has just been, and the whole premise of them in the chocolate factory has just been recycled through different things over the years.
Yeah,
but yet the
meme
film
culture as well has gravitated towards the film.
The memes, yes, and that's why it's so great that when you actually rewatch or revisit or just visit the film for itself, it still is it still holds up on its own without even thinking about all the ways that we as individuals on the internet and movies and shows have twisted it and turned it and stuff like that. Because that happens sometimes, where sometimes I'll try to go back to a movie that's just been distorted, I guess, via the pop culture or the internet, and it's kind of hard to go back. Like, The Matrix is that way for me, where it's like The Matrix has been parodied and done so much to death that I have a harder time appreciating it on its own merits. While Willy Wonka, that isn't the case. It's just, I watched it last night and I was in it. I was happy because it's got a point of view and a heart to it that isn't captured in all of these things that try to riff on it. It's got a cynicism. It's got a certain sparkle to it. Now, you, a few years back, were going to recommend this on the podcast and then backed off.
Yeah, I can't remember why. I think it might have just been one of those things where, like, last minute, I'm like, oh, let's do this instead. And then, with my self-appointed rule of, like, every second time not doing a Hollywood film, then that, by default sets a film back, like, 6 weeks for the podcast. And then by that point, my mind will be set on something else. So yeah, I was very intent on doing it at one point. I remember it was near the end of a year. Can't remember which year. And I can't remember what film I ended up picking instead. But it was always one that's like, I need to come back to that at some point. So the fact that you picked it, it's like, oh, good, that's one thing I don't have to, worry about anymore.
I have a DVD copy of this. It looks great. I would love to get a Blu-ray copy at some point, but I watched this last night in obviously preparation for this discussion, and it's such a warm and inviting film. The opening credits are an art form in itself. The filmmaker who did this was primarily a documentarian, and you can see that very clearly in just these opening credits, where
Yeah.
you're getting these shots of chocolates and candies and stuff being made, and the the actors and directors, all that names are just slapped on top of it, but in a very accommodating font and color. There's just something.
It's got that gold
Mhm.
that you might see on like a Lindt or something.
Yeah, on a chocolate
not
bar.
Lindt, but the Ferrero Rocher kind of
Ferrero
gold.
Rochers, yeah, like, and Lindt too, I would say, but like, it's a chocolate, it's chocolatey, like, yeah, this all of it is just pitch perfect.
Yeah,
It's
if
a
you-
film with a low budget. It has some rough around the edges bits to it, and yet it feels so natural and grounded, and each production choice makes sense with one another. It just is a film that builds upon itself.
Yeah, if you were to take out the music and the credits on that opening section and just like put narration over it, it's like, oh, this is a documentary.
That's it. It is. I just wanted to talk about those opening credits because it gets you in the mood for what the factory will be, the chocolate factory. It gives you a real world version of what a chocolate factory would be. So when we actually enter into his chocolate factory and it's nothing like the opening, it adds up to Willy Wonka as a character himself being this contradiction and this con man type figure and just a hustler, but also like, is he secretly a brilliant genius?
You can never get a read on him even after the film's over, and that's what makes it so fun.
That's what makes it so delightful and fun.
Like there's that famous trivia point about, Gene Wilder only did the film if they let him, do the first thing that Wonka does, where he's like, hobbling over with a walking cane and then does the fall and the roll.
Somersault.
Yeah.
Because his rationale being that you will never know from that point on if he's telling the truth or not. And he nailed it. Gene Wilder said that, and you're like, that's a very unique way of getting that message across, but it's effective. It's effective. The introduction, as a kid, I really wanted them just to get to the chocolate factory and, get to the things Get to the chocolate river and the boat scene and the geese and the, transmitted through TV.
Get to the titular stuff, yeah.
Get to the stuff. So as a younger person, I didn't appreciate the build-up, the build-up. But now as an adult, I love that stuff more. In a weird way, I love all of the interviews and the cutaways and the documentary and stuff.
I remember a couple of years ago, I watched the Red Letter Media review of this film, and they really highlighted that. And again, just like you, I mostly remembered like the factory stuff. I remembered a lot of the beginning parts as well, but not as fondly. And them just highlighting all the sorts of like weird things, weird places that the focus is on, really kind of drove me to want to see the film again and kind of really appreciate all that. Like the lady whose husband has been kidnapped, and she's like, full dedication, like, oh, anything to get him back. And then as soon as like,
and the detective's voice sounds exactly like from the 1940s noir film.
He wants your case of Wonka bars, and then just like the look on that actress's face.
Or the TV reporter, and they have the comedy framing of the antlers sticking out from behind his head perfectly. Or when they are interviewing each of the winners of the golden tickets, and it's in this very unflattering news-like way, like what's his name? Augustus Gloop is just eating food. It's like from a profile angle, and they're like, "How do you feel? Hungry?" And he's
hungry.
Or Mike TV is just
just wants to watch TV.
And the camera angle's like unflattering because clearly they couldn't move his television set to get a normal angle because he refused to let them. Like, there's a lot of implication of like how they get these.
Yeah, you get satire about their lives. It's like oh, here's Violet Beauregard. She just won the thing, and her dad's like trying to sell cars basically.
Yes.
And then for the Veruca one, like they don't even have it be the news footage. It's like the finding of the ticket.
Yes, the Veruca one. She's the one that has like a normal press conference, and she's just bragging. Not Veruca. Wonka, Violet Beauregard.
Violet, yeah.
She's the one that has like normal press conference, and she's just using it as an excuse to brag about how she has a world record that she beat her friend in.
She keeps bringing up her friend at every like news footage thing.
I really loved revisiting this. Now, you said you've had a bit of a tumultuous time in trying to revisit this. I mean, you have the DVD stuff going on. You were going to pitch it for the podcast, and then it's been delayed, and this and this. So what was it like for you to go back and watch this? What was your overall experience?
Yeah, very similar to a couple of different times on this podcast where we've done something that, I grew up on and haven't checked out in a while. It was just like a joy the whole way through, smile on my face, remembering quite a lot of the lines and like the sort of deliveries that happen. Yeah, I really enjoyed my time revisiting this film, and it was, very late at night, and even getting a copy was a bit annoying. But just watching the film, like, none of that really mattered.
What has changed for you rewatching it?
I guess understanding some of the more subtler lines, or there was one line in particular that I think I just never really noticed. It was when they were signing the contract, and Mike TV says something along the lines of like, I saw this in a movie once where a husband signed his wife up for insurance and then bumped her off, and I think Willy Wonka just has this really terse quick line of like, clever. That really got me.
One of the biggest changes for me, I think this is the first time I've watched it since Gene Wilder has passed away.
Oh, easily for me as well, yeah. That was like, what, 2016?
2016, and it changes the feel because, Gene Wilder is a beloved comedic actor. I would love to sit here and be so clever and edgy and not say that this is his greatest role, but I'm not going to do that. It's his greatest role. Like, yeah, I love Young Frankenstein. I love Blazing Saddles. Those are all great. But this is the Gene, the producers, but this is the Gene Wilder role. Like, this is what I think of when I think of him.
Oh,
and
for sure.
And when I think of Willy Wonka, I think of Gene Wilder. And so the melancholy that is inherently within Gene Wilder as a performer, because he always brought that with him, and the manic. It's the melancholy and the manic, the two M's with him. I think it was just more prevalent in his performance when I was viewing it this time because he's no longer with us, and he seemed like a really sweet, nice person in real life. And things do change when, someone as big as him passes away, and then you go back and watch one of their iconic performances. There is just a certain thing that within you as a viewer does get altered, and it's been the first time I've watched this since he's passed away, and that really did just ring out every time I was watching it, especially just the build-up. Even before we see him, I was getting more and more excited to see Willy Wonka. And it's not just because it's when the fun kookiness begins, but it was almost like, I get to see my good friend Gene Wilder again. I've been wanting to see that guy again. And
yeah,
so,
it's been a while too for me. I think when we did the producers on the podcast was the last time I saw him in a film.
Yes. It's also another thing that's changed for me is my appreciation for Charlie himself as a character. Growing up, he's fine. He's a kid, he's fine, he's the virtuous, nice one, but he's the least interesting. Like, you remember all of the other kids because they're caricatures, they have their iconic outfits, they're over the top, they have their gimmicks, they have their exits from the film, and each one of them is a kooky little freak, while Charlie has to be the straight-laced protagonist. But rewatching it last night, I had more of appreciation and understanding of what they're going for thematically with him, and the little details they put in to really lay it all out for you. So the film itself is being honest with where his character goes. It's not being saccharine and getting away with being so cute and sentimental and like, he gets the good ending because he's a good boy just because we said he is. But no, there's just so many little details thrown in the first half. This film is very much divided in the first 40 minutes of all of the lead up to the chocolate factory, and then the last 50 minutes where it's just a chocolate factory. It's very much a film of two parts, but that first half makes it all work because it is meticulously setting up all of the dominoes. What did you feel about Charlie himself? Because this film is called Willy Wonka and the Chocolate Factory, which is a different name than the book.
Yeah.
But Charlie is the main character. He's the one that is the audience surrogate or vessel.
I remember the general strokes of his character. You know, comes from a poor family, you know, isn't an offensive character or anything like that. But yeah, the film really goes out of its way to show how virtuous he is. Like, he is, you know, despite being a child of, you know, maybe like, 12, he is trying to be like half the breadwinner of his family, which is, you know, 4 elderly people that, you know, are unable to work, and his mother who's constantly, you know, working. Yeah. And, you know, there's a scene where like he goes to visit his mum's like, are you, you know, you done with work? Can I walk you home? You know, just a very sweet child. And his chemistry with Grandpa Joe is probably the thing I really enjoyed the most in this rewatch. Just those two work well together so well. You know, they're so warm to each other. I really enjoyed, seeing that.
I thought his performance was really great. You're immediately on his side. And yes, this is the movie magic and the magic of manipulation and stories, but you have the Candyman song where it's this fun, bubbly song, and it gets you salivating, all of these bright colors, and he's throwing all the candy everywhere, and it activates that inner child within you, in which you're like, man, I wish I was there when the Candyman was giving out free candy.
Yeah. The film opens on, you know, like a schoolhouse, and the bell rings and everyone's just running out, and it's like, yeah, free time. And then they go to the candy store, and, you know, colors and fun and song.
Weirdly enough, you just saying that stuff, it made me think of, we often now, and maybe we like this movie, but I think it's become a real touch point for us, but Tommy Tricker and the Stamp Collector is a film we
Traveler
is a film that we reference a lot because it captures the beauty of youth, which is hyperfixation. When you're a kid, you're hyperfixated, and it's like the entire world revolves around this one hobby or habit. And this does this too, where it's like, it's all kids, you know what they loved? Candy and chocolates, and this is the world where it's like, as school ends, they immediately all go there. But the thing is, Charlie is unable to participate in that world, not only because he is poor, and you could say like, oh, well, chucked out free candy, but he feels unwelcome in that environment. You see that in the school classroom, where we get a very, very classic British comedy scene with the teacher, where, you know, he's doing the, you know, Monday, and then Friday, and all that. Very funny, but Charlie is asked about how many Wonka bars he's gotten. He tells the truth. He says 2, and he's just mocked for it. He's like, oh, you're not going to get anywhere with that.
200?
Not 200. But I love this child performance. He's just so likable. And so when you first see him at the window with this expression on his face, that's not just one thing, but it's a multitude of things you can read, but you understand the overall feeling.
You know what? About 10 minutes ago, you asked me if I remembered anything else from my first viewing. I actually also remember that first shot of him where it's like, oh, this kid's different. And I remember young me was like, oh, is this like the mean kid?
Oh,
and then like very quickly it's like, oh, no, he's the nice kid.
Nice little blonde boy.
It's like, why is he frowning in this happy scene? Is he a bully?
He's going to beat them up. No. There is just something, you know, the art form of character introduction. There's just something so admirable when you see it pulled off in such like effortless ways. This is 101 perfect character introduction. Here he is, like, this is the perfect way. You don't need even dialogue to tell us he's downtrodden. Him at the window with that expression on his face says it all. And we just go from there, and we see his home life, and it's a slightly exaggerated version where they're all in the bed and his mother's constantly doing laundry, but it's exaggerated not too much because we need the world beyond the chocolate factory to feel tangible. So that way, when we get to the chocolate factory, we have the juxtaposition.
Yeah.
We have oh, here is insanity.
Yeah, and Charlie helps ground all that, where, you might say that it's silly that, all four grandparents share the bed and they haven't left in 20 years, and, a little boy and his mum are the only ones providing, but, Charlie takes all of that sincerely.
He's innocent.
He's innocent, and, he has to live his life around this situation, so you buy into it.
Charlie is pure of heart. He is not corrupted by the world like the other children or all of the adults. And that's why he wins in the end.
Yeah, that line that, and I forget the exact quote, so I'm probably going to mess this up, but the line that Wonka says after he gets the gobstopper back basically sums up, what the Charlie character is. It's like the one nice thing in this kind of dreary world or something like that.
Yeah, and...
It's from Merchant of Venice, I remember that.
There's a lot of great quotes thrown in, and we'll obviously talk about some of them, but the Charlie character, once, you're in the factory, he is kind of funny to me. Like, I think he's underrated in how funny he is, because we all love Willy Wonka and how funny Gene Wilder is and how he has that apathetic, like, help, someone.
Help, police.
Okay. But Charlie has that a little bit, where you can see why him and Willy Wonka relate to one another, because there are times where at the beginning of it, he's genuinely asking things in concerned tones, but by the end of the movie, he's very much like, why don't they just listen to Mr. Wonka? I don't get it. Like, the way the kid delivers it, but it's not so overt. Like, it's just a slight shift in the character where it makes it all the more believable that him and Willy Wonka can see eye to eye on things. They share similar kind of, why are they doing it like that type attitudes, but Willy Wonka is a much more like jaded version of it. Grandpa Joe, you're a fan?
I like Grandpa Joe a lot, yeah.
What a piece of shit, too. He's constantly saying some of the insane, cruelest things.
She's a nitwit.
What about when he's all like, oh, I can give up tobacco, whatever it is. It's unfair of me to make you work. And there's like, no, Grandpa Joe, you deserve it. It's like, oh, okay.
That was pretty funny. It's like, Grandpa, you can't give up your tobacco. It's like, no, but it's, we should use money for good things. Like, Grandpa, no.
And then here's the money from my tobacco for a chocolate bar because you're going to win. It's like, oh, Grandpa Joe. Grandpa Joe and the mum are very, I always forget that's like, that's her dad, of course, but, in this, and both of them have that, I guess, British cynicism where one of my favorite scenes in the whole movie is the mother what's supposed to feel like a motivational scene telling Charlie to give up on his dreams because he's unimportant and he's like everyone else in the world and nothing matters and you just should carry on. I love that scene. And what I love about it is I don't think it's supposed to be a black comedy scene. I think it's supposed to be a genuine scene because it feels like genuine, like British advice. Like I've seen that advice in the real world. I've seen that played in movies and shows, not for drama or not for irony. It's just like, here's how it is.
I saw that line for the intention they were going for because that's been the mother's character in the film. Like she's always about like, she worries for her child. She worries that, something will go wrong and it would crush him, and she really wants him to be able to bounce back from that. She wants him to be resilient. And so, this is a 5 in however many billion chance. She says there's 100 billion people in the world, which is mathematically wrong.
But Bartek, this film doesn't take place in our actual world.
That's
either.
true. That's true. It has Vernicious Knids.
Snoresberries.
Yes, I saw it for the genuineness that it is, but it did feel very funny that it felt very antithetical to like, childlike whimsy.
That's Roald Dahl stuff for you too, though. Some of it can be very blasé about morality and like here's the tale that we're telling. Like sometimes it can just be very blunt like this. We're like, holy shit, okay, we're going to tell like this, and the adults. I think it also ties into she is someone who has given up on dreams and that stuff, and she's trying to, for better or for worse, instill that upon Charlie. Because the thing of this movie is it's about the children being influenced and puppeted around and played with by the adults. And Charlie stays true to who he is at the end of the day.
Yeah, and her father, Grandpa Joe, kind of plays it in the opposite direction where it's like, yeah, let's build the hope up. This will be it. This will be it.
But there is,
and then when it's not it, he's like very warm about it.
But there is at times, I don't know if it's just maybe the performance or just how eager he is, but there are times where it feels like Grandpa Joe is a selfish character when he does this. I don't know, like it's on that opposite end, like you said, but it also feels kind of manipulative at times with Grandpa Joe. Like also it's just, I would sure love to help you, my daughter, if I could get my. But then as soon as opportunity strikes, he's like, my feet are on the ground. It's my golden ticket. It's like, oh no.
I remember when I first watched it, that is kind of the take I had. I was like, he's got a golden ticket. But I just took it for the metaphor that he was going for.
No, I understand. But then also he's the reason that they drink the fizzy lifting drinks.
Yeah, he's not a perfect character. He's flawed.
He's an influence. That's what I'm saying. Like, the film is aware that influences in your life exist, but you still have to stay true to who you are. Like, no one influenced Charlie at the end to give the everlasting gobstopper back. In fact, Grandpa Joe was saying...
going for the opposite.
For the opposite, but Charlie...
we're going to fuck him over by doing this. And Charlie's like, I'm going to do the exact opposite of that right now.
That's it. And that's why he wins out. But Grandpa Joe's great. He's just... He has that old vaudevillian type humor to him as well. And him and Gene Wilder share some barbs together, like only not too many, but enough where it's like these two are the adults in the room, while the other adults are kind of fools.
Yeah, a bit caricature-y.
Anything else you want to talk about of that first section before we get into the chocolate factory? Because obviously we all want to get to the chocolate factory, but
well, we have to win the ticket, right?
Pretty much half of the movie is set beyond that chocolate factory.
Yeah, I actually rewatched that Red Letter Media video I mentioned, and there is a point where they give the amount of time before the factory and amount of time after, and it is like just under 50%. It's like 47 minutes versus 57.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, so it's very close. It's like the 10-minute gap or something. Not necessarily analyzing what we see in the film, but I think, and this has been like 13 years, so maybe my memory's wrong, but there was a girl I knew who, I think she told me that a teacher of hers was one of the little girls in the first music number, like the children.
The Candyman?
Yeah. I think she said that, and I found that really interesting, and she pointed out to me that there is a part where
the Candyman hits a kid in the face.
Yeah. He opens the thing and the girl just like bumps back. I don't think that was her teacher, but
awesome.
I remember she found out because her teacher told her that.
It's very funny little detail, and they just keep going.
Yeah, and then later on,
we're not doing another take.
Yeah, and then there was another trivia point that this is in the factory, but like the Veruca like has the bloody knee because she landed on the rock.
Oh boy. Rough stuff. This film,
little girls,
blood, sweat, and tears.
Little girls are getting it.
Little girls sure do get it rough in this movie. One aspect I want to mention is I love the factory scene of like, I've got all the girls working on opening these chocolate bars. That factory scene. Sorry.
Mr. Sultan, his nut factory.
And I just love how realistic it feels, but exaggerated. I love his performance. He's probably my favorite adult.
Yeah, the henpecked father.
I love just how just stressed out he is at all times.
I always loved his line where it's when he gets down on his knees to like beg her and it's like, Veruca, sweetie darling.
And I just love how he's the one that's kind of the most opposed to Willy Wonka's nonsense, but then he's such a sucker for his girl's nonsense. It's just... He's a spineless man.
Yeah. I always thought that was an interesting element. Like, when you first meet the kids, you see both the parents, but only one will go on to, be a character.
The mother's like an absentee mother. Like, he's too hands-on as a dad, and she's detached as a mother. She's just sewing. She goes, oh, there you go. Yeah, I have to deal with her.
Yeah, you should just give her what she wants, Harold, or whatever.
You're going to get in trouble. Oh, well, off we go.
We also needed more of Augustus Gloop's dad. I think he could have brought a lot to the table.
Loved his mum. I loved Augustus Gloop's mum. She was great.
That's another thing that always always bummed me out. Like, oh, Augustus goes out really early.
Yes, but it is a memorable exit.
Yeah.
It's probably one of my favorite exits, and it's the first one. But it is something you don't forget. We meet Willy Wonka, a famous scene as we already discussed, and I really like that the cane sticks into the cobble path and it's just sticking up, and then he does the somersault, and they're all perplexed by him. Just so weird. And I don't want to do this as a match and compare reference fest, but the Tim Burton movie, it does a weird introduction to the Willy Wonka factory. We were actually making a reference to it before we started recording, but
yeah, we were singing the song.
Willy Wonka song. It's a memorable earworm song, but it's just such a almost day and night comparison of how to appropriately indicate that you're getting into a world of strangeness.
Yeah, this film starts at like a 2 or 3, and that one goes like 10 right off the bat.
Right off the bat, where in this you're genuinely upset or disturbed at him walking out with a cane, and it looks like he's been crippled in some way, and all of their reactions and their genuine reactions, which is great. They're horrified or they're concerned, and then he does the flip, and you're like, oh, okay, and then he completely changes character, and you're invested. While the Tim Burton one, it's a set piece. It's already a set piece where it opens
doors
up
open
the
and
doors.
there's a circus.
It reminds me of the scene in Shrek. The Disneyland.
Oh, the
rip-off
Welcome
scene.
to Dulot thing?
Yeah. It reminds me of that, where that also is like an earworm musical little number and so on. And yet that played very differently, and that's later in the movie. But like this is one where I don't want to reference it too much, but it is a great example of how this film's restraint makes it so that when it does let things go crazy, it feels more impactful, rather than in the Tim Burton one, everything is absurd from the beginning, so you have nowhere to go. There's no way of getting further up.
Yeah, when you go to the factory, you're not entering the kooky part. You've been in the kooky part the whole way, and now it's just a different style of kooky.
And this will be the last reference to the Tim Burton one I want to make, but I have to make it because this is a strength of this film. Willy Wonka, through Gene Wilder's performance and the minimal amount of like character writing he gets, you don't know who he is. He's an enigmatic, mysterious person that you and I and many people to this day can discuss and not come to the same consensus on. The Charlie and the Chocolate Factory Tim Burton one decides, no, you have to know who he is and why he's like this. I don't need in this film a concrete backstory explanation for why Willy Wonka is an exasperated, jaded adult who's tired of the cynicism of the world, because guess what? The contents of the film showed me why. Him seeing the youth act the way they are and him getting more and more, not necessarily angered, but more and more distressed by it, tells me that already. I don't need, he had a mean daddy who was a dentist, like in the Charlie and the Chocolate Factory one. I mean, how do you feel about that side of things with the Willy Wonka character? You already said it before, where it's like, it's hard to read him after all this time.
It's hard to read him, and so much of his lines like invite you to read it, and he'll deliver like the most mysterious lines with a tone of like, I'm being very clear here, aren't I? Like when he tells Veruca, like, we are the music makers, we are the dreamers, or something like that. It's like, what does that line mean? It seems like he's telling her to be quiet, but what are the individual meanings of the words he's saying?
There's a profound nature, but at the same time, it's flippant. Is he being profound? Is he being a teacher? Is he trying to impart worldwide wisdom, or is he just being flippant? That line in particular, that's one of my favorite lines. And I say this with absolute sincerity, but that's a David Lynch type line. Like David Lynch would love to use that in Twin Peaks.
Well, it mentions dreaming.
Yes, but David Lynch loves The Wizard of Oz, and I wouldn't be surprised if he liked the Willy Wonka and the Chocolate Factory. He loves those type of like unironically sincere things, and that's how I feel about this movie. It's sincere. It has irony throughout it. It has this mean streak, and Gene Wilder captures it all brilliantly, but at the same time, it's a sincere performance. It feels genuine. It never feels like the actor is just hamming it up or being cruel to the kids or whatever. It feels like very, I don't know, it means something.
Yeah, when he's being warm, you really feel the warmth. Like, obviously at the end scene where he's like explaining everything to Charlie, but even the scene at the gate when he's like shaking every kid's hands and saying hi to the parents, like, I really loved those interactions there where it's just like, yeah, this guy has a social intelligence. Like, he can, he brushes off Mike's like, bam, you're dead with a wonderful to meet you. What a cute child, kind of thing. Really, really warm, genuine there.
There is no 100% consensus golden rule of how to perform in family films. But it's a good, rule to play it as seriously as you would any other. And that's Gene Wilder in this. He does not feel like, oh, well, I'm doing a kids film, so I got to play it like a kids movie. And I say that because, we have talked about many performances from adults in children's media and how they can be really fun because they're playing it as seriously as they would a drama. But then also you have some like Paul Giamatti in Big Fat Liar where, he knows exactly the type of movie he's in and he's just going to have the time of his life doing it. And that's a way of doing it as well. But Gene Wilder, I think why this lingers and why this is probably his most memorable role is it as a performer, it kind of captures every aspect that he did in his career. Like, he's funny, he's charming, he can be manic and over the top, he can be scary at times, he can be do a little bit of adult humor and a little bit of kid humor, he can sing and he can dance. Like, even with the minimal we've seen of him like on our podcast, this captures everything, and from what you know of him from other things, it captures kind of everything that you want of Gene Wilder in a weird way.
I think the only thing you didn't list that I've seen him in is God, what was that Woody Allen film? Everything You Always Wanted to Know About Sex But Were Too Afraid to Ask, where he's like in love with a lamb or something.
Yeah, but that's a part of the humor there is he's playing it seriously.
Yeah, he's playing it serious, and
but it's goofy.
Yeah, it's very funny.
Yeah.
I really like that film.
What else do you want to discuss when it comes to Willy Wonka himself, Gene Wilder's performance, any favorite moments or choices or observations?
God, favorite moments, like a favorite hour with him.
Yeah, what of every scene of his do you want to discuss?
Well, a lot of people who haven't seen the film probably at least know the meme shot where he's, this is the most secret machine in the factory, and he's like leaning on it to like your first time here, I think is the meme name. Yeah, but that an element of his character there, though, is like, he will, with utmost seriousness, say like, stop, you can't do this thing. And then it gets people curious, and he's like, you're curious now, aren't you? Let's have a look at it, actually. And then things unfold.
It sounds like an obvious statement, but the Pure Imagination song is probably my favorite bit.
Probably for me too, yeah.
There's a beautiful incongruity there. There's a beautiful disconnect because the song itself and the way Gene Wilder sings it is so sweet and so, I don't know, it's packed. It's a packed song, and yet it's a light, airy song, and there's lots of breaks. But on the visual level, he's so apathetic when he's doing it. Like, so performative. Like I often forget this until you watch it, but like the constant rehearsed up and down the stairs moves and the snapping of his cane, and
it goes back to that whole dreamlike aspect, like that I imagine also David Lynch would really like, where like the constant chime in the song's like the dun dun dun, and like I think at the beginning of the song he starts with like this little poetic line about like make a wish, count to 3, and then he starts singing. And there's gaps where he's not singing and, constantly like pulling out his cane to stop them to, sing a bit more of the lines. And you read in the trivia that like so many times the kids were hit by the cane. It's like, yeah, I can imagine.
Of course.
Because it's very sudden every time.
It's very sudden, and they're surprised each time, and genuinely too. But do you get what I mean there? Like, it's not a mistake. It's not a flaw. It's what makes the song is there's that beautiful disharmony there of how it's being performed, and the music is just so, I can't think of any other word than beautiful, to then what you see on the screen, which is this very, he's performing like he's tired almost, like like he's just doing like the jumping up and down the stairs, or my favorite bit, which is when they're all running around looking at the food and whatnot, he just grabs his cane and stabs it into one of the mushroom tops and just uses an umbrella and spins it around. But and then he leans and he's spinning it around, but he has this look on his face of just like, basically, another time I'm just, here I am.
Once he's on the ground floor of that area and like, he's done the bow and everyone's run off to eat whatever they want, every time it cuts back to him, it's like he's contemplating on his life. And it's like, if we had a certain context that we are not given at any point in this film, like this whole sequence would mean something completely different. It's like, this is the window into him that's probably the most honest.
I would say.
But we don't have the literacy to understand what it means.
And I don't mind, but I would have to say the scene that probably shows its hand the most of what Willy Wonka's about is the boat scene, because he's so fucking crazy. It's just so bizarre, and I love it because it's so bizarre. Like, it's a well-known fact, but this is a G-rated movie that has the death of an animal in it. Like, usually a chicken's head get chopped off or whatever it is. It's like, this is a G-rated movie.
In the Red Letter Media video, they pointed out, like, this film and Apocalypse Now, the only films that have like a live animal being murdered on screen or something.
Like prestige, like well-respected films.
Yeah.
I mean, we did Friday the 13th.
Mainstream, I think, is what they said.
We did Friday the 13th. That had an animal being killed.
That's true, yeah.
And it was upsetting. It wasn't upsetting here because it was so in the background and you were kind of like, wait, what? Because there's a part of you like, this is a family film and we're just going to have creepy bugs.
It's a sequence where you really don't know what's happening.
It's so, not otherworldly, but unworldly. Like, it's not of a world at all.
It's a signature scene of the film, yeah. I mean, there's that channel, or the people that make the animators of How It Should Have Ended, and it's all based around like, oh, after that, the film should just be over because everyone's like, fuck this, I'm out.
My favorite just random offset line is from Salt's dad, which is just, he's singing.
Oh, he's singing.
Oh, he's singing. Because you read the trivia and it's like they didn't know. Like, they thought he was having a psychotic break or whatever it is, and they weren't really prepared. And I don't know, like, how truthful the extent of that trivia point is, but for some reason, the way he says, oh, and now he's singing feels so real. He like that actor.
Yeah, the trivia.
He just seems like slightly different to the regular performance, and he seems like genuinely like unnerved by this event that's happening in front of his face.
Yeah, the trivia has a lot, and it's like all in that sequence of the film where it's like 3 different times where it's like the crew and the cast were not aware that this is happening, so it's genuine reaction. It's like the introduction, seeing the main room, and then the boat scene.
Well, that's the beauty of having the director who's a documentarian. They want to capture genuine reactions because that's what documentaries live and breathe on.
Yeah.
And so let's not tell them, let's not show them, let's not do this, and let's see what happens. And also that's maybe throughout the whole entire movie, because I know the actor of Charlie was very vocal about his relationship with Gene Wilder and how they grew to be very close friends and they got on well, but like he was so perplexed that when they were off screen he was so nice and blah blah blah. Then when the cameras were rolling, Gene Wilder would perform it so drastically different than they expected, and it was like unnerving because he's like, now he's screaming at me.
Oh yeah, I think that was
like the
trivia
final
point.
scene.
Yeah,
where
that was another one where
you lose.
Grandpa Joe and Charlie their actors didn't know.
I don't know if it's maybe me just being a bitter adult, but do you like it? I do. In movies where children, like kids' movies, where children are shown to be horrid monsters, cruel little beings and appropriately or maybe inappropriately get scolded by adults, because that's this movie. These children are fucking monsters, and I'm sitting there going, that's right.
If it's
Children suck.
If it's deserved, then absolutely go for it.
That scene, though, in the office where everything's cut in half, which is one of my favorite set, by the way. I love that set. I want that set. I love how even the magnifying glass is cut in half in this contract, and he makes a joke about it's like, et cetera,
because you can't read.
You can't read the rest of it. But that scene is also an iconic scene of like, you lose, good day, sir, like all that.
I said good day.
Because Gene Wilder's going so, what you would say is unnecessarily hard in it, and yet it's one of my favorite things because in your mind, in a children's film, well, they would never perform it like this to an actual child.
And it's a huge contrast to everything that came before. Even, the last thing you saw of him before this scene is just him being like, exit's over there, thank you, goodbye. It's like he's avoiding that confrontation.
Do you, from what you've read of the behind the scenes and what you see on the screen, do you think maybe because it was a film in the 70s, like, they're a little bit iffy ethically wise of how to treat these children? Like, there's this girl with her injury here, and the kids are getting hit in the face with the cane accidentally, and Gene Wilder's just going to scream at this one kid in this scene, like, and we're not going to tell the kid they're going to be screamed at. I don't think, like, a lot of this movie you read and I go, I don't think they would just do that nowadays. I don't think they would have to, like, we have to do this, we have to get this through the legal, like, this was this was a low budget film too for its time. Like, it was like
$3 million, I think.
Yeah, like $2 million or something very low, and they're just, I think the description I read was they were flying by the seat of their pants a lot with the making of this movie. And I was just wondering, like, how do you feel about that aspect of it? Like, there are parts of it where I kind of find it thrilling in the way that they wouldn't dare to do some of the things this movie does because, well, we can't do that to children, or we can't show that being done to children.
I mean, the intentional one of, like, the screaming at the end, like, that one I think is fine. But yeah, the injury stuff, I think as long as they took it seriously when it happened, I don't think any of the trivia pointed out it was like neglect, like, oh, you hurt your knee, whatever. No. Although it was kind of funny reading the trivia that all of the actors felt very sorry for the Augustus Gloop actor when he had to keep falling into that river.
Mm-hmm. Of course, you would have to. They're waterboarding that kid. They're drowning that kid. But yeah, I just wanted to bring it up because it is, for me, it's a thrilling aspect of the movie. And yeah, the yelling scene, but I don't know, there's just something about it where...
There was a true point that said that Gene Wilder really wanted to tell Charlie's actor about it, but the director said no.
No. And there's just something unnervingly raw about it that I find exhilarating when I watch it. I'm like, yeah, you fucking scream in this kid's face and basically tell Grandpa Joe to fuck himself. Like, it's just because
it is. I think it is mostly him directing it at Grandpa Joe, at least.
Yes.
So, yeah.
Because I think it's also a catharsis. Because you know that Willy Wonka is a son of a bitch in a weird way in the movie, and that he's making these so subtle jabs at all of these people. And you know that there's something brewing with him as a character. So to see him, like, just unload at the end, there's something cathartic about it. But then to snap back and be like, I've learned a thing. You reminded me that the world could be good again. And, him and Charlie, and Grandpa Joe flying off into the sky, basically, and having a happy ending. It's like, oh, it's nice. It all works well. Did you know that they... another trivia point I was reading... I don't know if the Red Letter Media video brought it up. I didn't rewatch it, but that they had trouble with the ending of this movie.
Oh, the Grandpa Joe had a line?
That it was going to end with Grandpa Joe just saying, yippee. And they're like, we can't end the movie by saying yippee.
I think because I was reading some of the trivia on the bus over here, and I think it said something like, they'd written the script and they'd gone their separate ways, pre-production wise, and then like a phone call in the middle of the night, it's like, hey, I was just reading the script. We can't just end it on him saying yippee. So they come up with something else.
They should have they ended on an amazing line instead, but they should have ended it on him saying yippee and then a freeze frame.
I was about to say that, yeah. and a zoom in.
And a zoom
Make
in.
it like Gnorm.
And then some poppy music of the 70s come in. We haven't talked about them, though. One of the most iconic features of the movie.
Mm-hmm.
We haven't really discussed the Oompa Loompas.
Yeah, they have green hair.
What do you feel about the Oompa Loompas?
I think they're fun. They add to the weirdness of the factory where, you know, there are people working here and they are, you know, from a place you've never heard of and they look completely different to us and they have a very goofy sounding name and they're treated very seriously.
And they have deep voices.
Mm.
And their songs are earworms and unforgettable and just amazing. The Oompa Loompas are just another thing that's iconic.
Mm.
Great design, great capturing of it. You know, we won't get into it, but there's a whole discussion to be had about Oompa Loompas and the impact on dwarfs and little people and that being good or bad and things like that, and just how, you know, for the acting world, it's like, well, those people got work, you know, when they probably wouldn't get work, and other than that, they had a hard time finding little people because, you know, it's Germany. So it's not like it's...
Yeah, they had to
get some
bring him
from
in.
Turkey and some other places. And
they didn't speak German or English, a lot of them.
Yeah, so they really had to just be like, do this.
There was a trivia point about them that just had me bursting out with laughter, where it was... They really liked to party, so they would all get together, rent a limo, and go like bar hopping or something.
Your favorite song? Is it Pure Imagination?
It's actually a toss up between Pure Imagination and Grandpa Joe's song.
The Golden Ticket?
Yeah, it might be.
I like Veruca Salt's song.
That one's really good too. Yeah, but it's a toss up between those two. I just really like the energy of the first one and just, you know, the mystique of Willy Wonka's song.
Yeah, mine has to be the Willy Wonka Pure Imagination. I like the Veruca Salt one. I think it's fun. I think it's just also it's performed really well, and I like the visual execution of it. And just she was my favorite of the kids as well. Like she's just so obnoxious.
And also after we have the Pure Imagination song, basically all of the songs after that are from the Oompa Loompas, but then you have that one in there. It's like, you know, combo breaker.
Yes. Anything else you want to say about Willy Wonka and the Chocolate Factory?
Yeah, you said Veruca Salt was your favorite. I mean, she was definitely a standout there. Like, not only is she introduced differently, you know, it's an actual scene. It's not like a news report. But like the clear and direct delivery of all her lines and just really, really hammering in that characterization.
She's the only one of the children that kept acting as well. She was at least acting until like 2015, I want to say. And I've seen her in some stuff, so that's something to just mention as well. This was a fun time. I'm glad I pitched this. I'm glad to have revisited it. There was just something about how I want to ask you this and see what your viewpoint is. We said at the start, this has like a kind of timeless quality to it. Like this is something enjoyed by multiple generations, and yes, it's a film from the 70s, and I mentioned like it's filmed in Germany, but it has all these other actors from different places where, yeah, you can tell is in Germany from some of the architecture and obviously some of the actors, but it
very
feels
European.
like it's from everywhere though. Like it could be in England, it could be in the backwaters of the US, like it could be anywhere, but it's also... You know what I mean?
Yeah, it's interesting because it's been a very long time since I'd seen this film before yesterday. And I kept struggling to remember, like, was Charlie American or British?
Mm-hmm.
Because there is, and Red Letter Media got into this a bit as well, but like there is a very British dryness to a lot of the comedy, and especially in the first half.
The teacher,
and you also, you have a, poor boy in a very grayish house, kind of evokes like Oliver Twist in your head. So it's like, oh, was he British? Was he American?
Yes. But what I was going to ask is, why does this have such a generational appeal, this movie, for you? Why does this have a timeless quality?
It's a good question. No, I really do like movie musicals. This one is a very iconic one. It is very sincere in its whimsy. You mentioned before the comparison to Tommy Tricolour and the Stamp Traveler, and I agree with that completely, the love of candy. And it even has that extra element of, like, there are some adults who are also very into this same thing. Like, you got the guy that runs the candy shop, Grandpa Joe builds up the mystique of the chocolate factory. The teacher is also very much into this whole Wonka stuff to the point that he dismisses and redismisses his class. So it captures that level of whimsy, which is always really fun to see. The songs are really catchy. And yeah, there's just so much sincerity in this film, even when it is being so larger than life.
I think it is inviting. It wants you to engage with it. It wants you to have feelings. That helps. Another aspect that I think helps it is laser focused on what excites and interests children, no matter what. When I was watching this last night, I was remembering the times in which after school we would go down to the shop down the road and grab a bunch of different, chocolates and candies. What were your favorite ones? What were mine? Like, oh, for $2 I could get like a bag the size of my head of sour, gummy worms, or the gumballs that were wrapped up in the wrapping that looked like soccer balls, and and that's something that's memorable, or even something that's like you would worry that it would be like of its time, but they just managed to predict it really well. Was Mike TV, kid obsessed with TV. Guess what, guys? Still the same. After all this time, still the same. Still nailed that. Like, they just have such a finger on the pulse of what kids are interested in, which still holds true to when you watch it now.
I remember, to say something for the Tim Burton one, they even like updated that one to have Mike TV be into video games rather than TV.
Yes. But also, I won't get into it, but I remember, like, as a kid who played video games being like, oh, okay, this is one of those movie versions of, like, kids love video games.
I think he's introduced shouting, like, die, or something like that.
Yes. But I recommend Willy Wonka and the Chocolate Factory, of course. I think everyone should check this out. If you have not watched it before, obviously, give it a watch. If you have children who haven't watched it, let them watch it. God damn it. They might find Charlie's Mum's musical number boring, but that's fine. It's fine. There's better ones there.
And if it upsets you, it's like, oh, you're going to be upset? Well, cheer up, Charlie.
Oh, there you go.
Don't be a pernicious knid.
The snoresberries taste like snoresberries.
Pernicious knids. Snoresberries.
God. So, it is now, you obviously recommend Willy Wonka and the Chocolate Factory to everyone?
Yes, absolutely.
Is your brother a fan of this? It seems like you went out of your way to make this a part of your childhood. It wasn't something that was just in the household. So, was this in your brother's life? Has he watched this? I'm just wondering.
I think so. I think, I mentioned it to him last night. Like, oh yeah, watching this. I think DVD's messed up, so I have to use your Stan account.
Mm-hmm.
It's a good question. I don't know if he has a close relationship to it, but I'm sure he's definitely seen it.
Yeah. Fair enough.
I know that because we were hanging out last night and I took the bus home with our friend Will. And yeah, we were chatting about it and he really liked it too. He, similar to me, he hasn't seen it in a million years. But yeah, we were talking about memories of the film.
Well, we're moving on to a recommendation from the listening people.
Mm-hmm.
Listening people can recommend films to us. If people are wanting to get a film talked about, all you have to do is message us through our email or our social medias. All of that's in the description. And this is a more recent recommendation, someone that you got a recommendation from. We're moving on to another children's film, an iconic one of a much more recent variety, Inside Out.
Oh, yes.
Yes.
That's right. Yeah, I put that on like a few weeks ago.
And that was pitched our way.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it's time to give that a watch. That's obviously a Pixar movie. Will this remind me, have we done a Pixar movie on the pod?
No,
Yes.
we've done
DreamWorks.
We've done DreamWorks and we've done Chicken
Little,
Little,
which is just Disney.
not Pixar, but kind of evokes it. No, this will be the first Pixar one, I'm pretty sure.
And have you seen it?
No, I haven't actually.
Okay, interesting. So, Inside Out, the first film, Inside Out.
This one's recommended by Edgar.
So, thank you all so much for listening in, and we all hope that you enjoyed our discussion here today on Willy Wonka and the Chocolate Factory. Feel free to reach out to us and or follow us on our social medias. You can find all of that in the description of this episode. Rate and review the podcast, and if you do that, we would really love it. We would give you a thumbs up. We'll see that rating or review and just go, nice.
And Ryan will sing, I got a 5-star review.
I've got a 5-star review. Yes, I got it. Just specifically me.
Well, yes,
and
because that song's all about selfishness.
Yes, and that one guy whose name sounds like how it's spelt is...
Hey, we got to update that because I've looked at the YouTube transcripts and they do not know how to transcribe my name.
That's sad.
According to them, according to people who are deaf, my name is just BK.
What are you, a member of the Kong family?
BK, Bonky Kong.
Bonky,
For the
is there a Bonky Kong?
No, there should be though, because Bonky is the Polish plural for fart.
Oh.
Farts.
Oh.
For the deaf people, my name is BARTEK.
Bartek.
Bartek
I
Kong.
was watching a movie the other day, and the score was done by a Mr. Steve Bartek.
Mm-hmm. From Oingo Boingo,
From
right?
Oingo Boingo, correct.
Who did the music for the other for Willy Wonka.
Yes, and I was like, I know that. We've done this person on the podcast before. I was watching Romy and Michelle's high school reunion was the movie, and I was like, oh, it's the music by Steve Bartek. And I was like, I swear we've had a movie on this podcast where I was like, oh, Bartek, it's you. And I remember asking you very sincerely, have you ever encountered Bartek as a last name before? Because it's a first name thing, and you very flatly went, never. Just never. Like you were like, no, never. And I'm like, well, now you have. You've now experienced a Bartek. Oh, of course, he worked on the Spider-Man movies with Danny Elfman. So
yeah.
That's one of the podcasting movies we did. Oh, and he did Chicago and The Men in Black. This guy, Steve Bartek, I'm looking him up. He just won't stop working. He just does it. But Snow Day was the film.
Yeah. Steve BK.
Steve BK, thank you for your work. Okay, I lied. I'm going to make one reference to Tim Burton one. I'm just going to be ending the thing. The Oompa Loompa songs are fucking garbage in that movie. How can you get Danny Elfman, the Oingo Boingo guy who makes like fucking silly clown music, and somehow fuck up the Oompa Loompa songs, which seem like they should coincide with his type of music, but like it's been too long. But from what I remember, like they did this thing in the Charlie and the Chocolate Factory. It's like, oh, each one's a different genre of song, and you couldn't understand a word of it. But
and ironically, despite not understanding the words, it was in the book, which I've read the book, but it's been too long.
But we better leave, or else Jamie Kennedy will be very upset that we're talking negatively about the Tim Burton Charlie and the Chocolate Factory, because his good friend Deep Roy was the Oompa Loompas in that film. And Deep Roy was very happy with the success of that movie, that he wanted to get some pussy with Jamie Kennedy. So we better get out of here before we get heckled.
But he was the only Oompa Loompa in that film, like actor-wise, right?
Yeah, he was all Oompa Loompas.
So he wouldn't even need to hire a limo to go bar hopping.